Height. It's a funny little thing. When it's controlled and used right, it can bring a lot of attention to something that a lot of people are very excited for. Get them so interested that even if the product ends up bad, they can still remember the fun they had while being excited for it. But when it's done poorly and the product, ends up sucking, it can lead to a bitter experience that makes you wish you never had any hope in your heart to begin with. So that begs the question, where does granblue Relink's demo fall into all of this for me personally, especially since it just dropped? Well, how about we talk about that, shall we? It's Crimson Rosso, and let's talk about my thoughts on granblue Relink's demo, shall we? So, just coming off fresh from beating the game, let's discuss what I think was good about it. First thing first, Relink both looks and runs great on PS5. Throughout my entire playthrough, I never once saw the game stutter or dip in frames even once, which was genuinely impressive to me considering just how much was happening on screen at a time. There were multiple enemies and party members launching attacks all at once with no slowdown whatsoever. I'm not certain how the full finished product will be, or how other boss fights will be handled considering we only got about a couple in this, but from the demo alone, I have very high hopes for how well optimized it's going to be running. The game, along with running very well, looks very pretty to boot. I liked how vibrant and colorful the areas we explored were, and I hope they keep this kind of consistency for the entire game when it's finally dropped in a couple of weeks. And while the feels looked good, I think the character models are where it shined the most. They had a good amount of detail, visual appeal, and movement to keep them engaging to look at both in gameplay and cutscenes. This prettiness also transferred quite well into combat, which is what we shall talk about now. Combat in granblue at first seems like pretty by-the-numbers action RPG when viewed at face value. Guarding, dodging, comboing, normal and heavy attacks for maximum damage. But the more you dive into it, the more it starts opening up. I think outside of combo canceling, my favorite aspect was the link attack system, since it's not only looks awesome, but if it's executed right, you gain a buff to all of your party members for a time that helps with decimating the waves of enemies you deal with. And I love that. I love when games reward me for mastering their systems. It makes me feel like the time I spent improving was truly worthwhile. It also helps that the characters control very beautifully. I loved how it felt to just move around and cut down my enemies. I had a big dumb smile on my face every time I pulled off this cool dodge and then just struck down the enemy with a long combo. And that's pretty much it for my pros. I decided to skip over story as I felt like if I was going to get this whole game, I wanted to go in more blind. And the co-op section ran very well for what I played of it. So I really don't have anything else to say. How about we move on to what needs work then? So, from what I played, Relink doesn't really have any glaring flaws to point out, but it's some more minor to middle things that kinda added up as time went on and started bugging me. For starters, the super move combos. Now, at certain combat intervals, you can utilize an L3-R3 button prompt to have you and your party launch multiple super moves at once. Something that, at first, I thought was rather cool, until I learned you couldn't skip them, and their attack animations will appear while you're trying to kill the enemy. It may not seem like much at first when you see it, but it starts to get annoying when you're trying to combo an enemy after a super attack, and it just cuts to their teammate launching their own attack, and then you try to do it again, and then it cuts you off again with another attack, and then it happens again, then it cuts you off again. You see what I get here? It just starts to get so fucking irritating when you're trying to launch this badass combo, but then you just get fucked up with a super move caught, and just your whole combat flow gets messed up. I'm hoping these have a skippable toggle in the full game when that's dropped, but if not, ooh boy, that's gonna get on my nerves. Another minor issue is that I couldn't swap my characters. I'm not fully certain if other playable characters will be doable in the story mode, or if that's just for the co-op missions, but I kinda hope it is possible in story mode, because I really wanted to try out everyone else in the story. I could have missed this, I admit, and if I did, let me know in the comments, but I couldn't find a way to swap over to my characters during battle. And my last issue with the demo is how the lock-on is handled. See, unlike most other action RPGs where you press a button and just lock on to an enemy, Relink has you hold down the L2 button and you have to keep holding it down to stay locked onto an enemy, which A, feels like quite a bizarre decision when it should just be an instant tap, and B, feels oddly counterintuitive when you're battling as many enemies as you are in Relink. I remember my finger going stiff during the boss fight at the end of the demo due to just how uncomfortable constantly holding it down made me feel. And finally, I'm going to be real here, enemies are way more spongy than needed. Some mini bosses felt like you were unloading 20 more attacks than necessary into them, and it just started to make me roll my eyes. It felt like a very artificial way of making fights go longer, and started to get really tiring by the time you reach the end of the demo. It's kind of similar to how Final Fantasy 16 was, if you removed all of the stuff that gave you those crazy attacks. Like a Final Fantasy 16 game where the icons didn't just destroy your enemies, so now you just had to use the same combos over and over again. It was pretty irritating, and I'm hoping it's because we didn't get to level up a whole lot in the demo, and the stronger we get, the easier it'll be to kill enemies. If not, though, I'm kind of worried for that. And that's pretty much it for my complaints. Let's move on to my final thoughts. At the end of it all, what is my verdict? Well, that's the thing. I thought it was alright. I have some complaints, but I did think granblue Fantasy Relink was pretty fun, and I think it was kind of worth the wait. I do hope that the issues I had can be solved by playing the full game on release, so we will have to wait and see. But I'm still interested in picking up the game and reviewing it once it drops. And that's all from me, folks. If you like this video, do me a favor and like and sub down below for more RPG content. And if you're interested in hearing more about Relink, my good friend Mad Kaiser has been talking about it far more than I have, so do me a favor and go check him out. I'll leave his YouTube link down below. Thank you all once again, and have a wonderful day.